Today, armored vehicles are streaming from all directions and a thunderous rumble towards the war fronts. It is a conflict Europe hasn't seen for decades. For these behemoths, the looming clash of our allies in the West will be the order of the day. Ukraine has stated it will become a blazing inferno like all else before it. And the higher the stakes, the higher the cost. And the nuclear risk is even greater. Russia says between this and that, there is one fact similar to the days of the hellish conflicts of yore. Dispatching tanks, notably Abrams, the American, and Leopard, the German, means a point of no return in the war. Are you exposed to a Russian defeat, which seemed impossible in recent days? Or does it unleash its nuclear weaponry, threatening the West, and Joe Biden and all of humanity, with defeat? In this special feature, we will answer all these questions. Stay tuned to the end. In the story, what is the strongest of the tank alliance? Just hours passed on Germany's announcement that the Russians could not have imagined it was the Ukrainians' most powerful dream. Berlin insisted on sending 14 tanks from the Leopard 2 to Kiev as the initial thrust. To transform the Ukrainians' dreams into a nightmare for the Russians, they did not stop there. The United States President Joe Biden's adversary, Russian President Vladimir Putin, was met with another shock when the U.S. declared it would be sending 31 tanks of the M1 Abrams combat version to Ukraine, which amounts to a battalion of tanks. As part of a plan to dispatch what could reach 200 tanks, with the guarantee of supplying Ukraine with spare parts and equipment in addition to training. Even though Biden has postponed the tank's arrival to Ukraine for months, he also hastened the arrival of the German Leopard 2 tanks to the battlefield. Biden did not forget to attempt to limit the Russian response, which could be catastrophic, by sending a message to its effect that Abrams tanks do not constitute a threat to Russian lands, but to the Russian soldiers inside Ukraine. While sources disclosed that the U.S. will be granting Ukraine 8 tanks from the M8 generation to support Abrams tanks in the event of any enemy. As for the Germans, they were also precise when discussing the details of the follow-up of their tanks, revealing the formation of 2 battalions of Leopard 2 tanks quickly, and a soon-to-be-executed training of the Ukrainian forces in Germany, along with supplying it with logistics and fuel. And taking into account that the battalion usually consists of 3 or 4 companies. Each of them consists of approximately 14 tanks. This means that a group of around 80 to 110 German tanks were sent. It is a sure thing German media have talked about the formation of Germany as an alliance to provide Ukraine with a group of 80 Leopard 2 tanks. Before and after. The assembly of the Western Tanks Alliance was followed by a similar announcement from Norway and other European countries. The matter was welcomed by the NATO alliance and the Ukrainian side with the alliance of massive tanks. In addition to the details of the German and American tanks with 120 mm, Britain declared its determination to send 14 of its battle tanks Challenger 2 with 120 mm. And Poland, Norway, Finland and Spain, which declared they were ready to send Leopard 2 tanks. While Holland announced its intention to send battle tanks to Ukraine if the situation requires. France is also analyzing the sending of Leclerc tanks with 120 mm. In addition to what Biden revealed that Germany is providing Ukraine with a system of Patriot missiles. But the most important query remains to be answered. How will these tanks alter the course of the battles? Analysts and military professionals concur that the Western choice to dispatch tanks to Ukraine is of paramount importance. Not like air defense systems or anti-tank missiles, these tanks are offensive weapons that could alter the nature of the conflict. The heavy Western arms are pointed at hitting Russian forces with force through a land invasion. This step is seen by Western media as a new, aggressive move and speaks to the unease of the NATO alliance in the North Atlantic. In spite of the difficulties of the incorporation of these tanks into service across Ukraine and its upkeep. However, this decision of the West affirms its conviction that Russia can be defeated and leaves no uncertainty that the Ukrainian forces are setting up a major land attack. It is possible that the Ukrainians could accomplish what was thought to be unimaginable months ago: battle Russia even inside its borders and strike targets deep within Russia. The Western goal remains the same. The introduction of the tanks is the initiation of an intended Russian attack in the coming weeks with the aim of taking control of the two districts of Luhansk and Donetsk, the ultimate objective set by Putin for his war on Ukraine. Potential operation of the Leopard tanks in the battleground soon will make a temporary change in the arena. Until the Abrams tanks are ready, which will take some time due to the need to cross the Atlantic Ocean to reach Ukraine and its more complex systems needing intense training, especially since they will be some of the latest models, making them highly effective and giving the Ukrainians a superiority on the battlefronts, putting the Russians on the defensive. After approximately a year of the Ukrainian army capturing the major battle tanks, they will soon fight on the fronts alongside advanced battle tanks such as the American Bradleys 109 and the German Martyrs 40, along with mobile heavy artillery, offering the Ukrainian army with the tools necessary to win in a modern mechanized war. Military research centers confirm the armor of the main battle tanks and the major 120mm cannons with thousands of shells, making it an offensive weapon with an immeasurable value, especially since it can overcome the enemy's light to eliminate armored vehicles, buildings, and all obstacles, allowing the Ukrainians to recover territories such as the Crimea and Donbass with the victory of using fighting machines instead of sacrificing soldiers. Ukraine's defense industry has been gravely impacted by months of relentless Russian missile attacks. Kyiv now faces two choices to obtain the main battle tanks they need. They can either purchase Soviet-era tanks from Eastern European countries and have them refurbished, or they can turn the tide of the war by acquiring some of the largest NATO main battle tanks, such as the German Leopard 2 or the American M1 Abrams. Ultimately, the Western nations chose the latter, but Russia responded with two distinct lines of defense. The first was to downplay the significance and effectiveness of the incoming Western tanks, and to threaten that they would be reduced to ash. Russian websites and videos of Abrams tanks being destroyed in Iraq were used to support this. The second line of defense was far more intimidating, as Moscow suggested that NATO was now a party in the war and even threatened nuclear retaliation if Putin felt that he was in danger of losing. President Biden stood firm in his decision to send tanks, but Putin attempted to differentiate between the US and its European allies in a desperate attempt to save face. It was clear that Putin realized he was on the brink of defeat and that the possibility of Russia losing the war was a real one. No one in the West, not even Biden, could have predicted the extent to which Putin would go if he accepted his defeat and refrained from carrying out his nuclear threats.